Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the Plant Spot. Today we're going to take a trip down memory lane. Don't know if you remember, we talked about me propagating this plant back in July. Guess what? I did it, and I'm going to show you how. So if you like this type of content, stick around. So as I mentioned in the intro, we're going to talk about the Syngonium Chiapense. If you guys know me and if you've been on the channel before, you know that this is one of my favorite plants. Recently, I had to propagate it. I'm going to insert a picture of what she looked like when I got her. Well, it's actually a little bit after I got her. When I purchased her, she was in a 3-inch pot, about yay high, and she wasn't on a moss pole, just on a support stick. And a few months later, I put her on a moss pole, and that's the picture that we'll insert. In July, she grew to be about 8 feet tall. She was hitting the ceiling of this plant room, and I struggled to propagate her. I didn't want to cut her. Her leaves were so big and so beautiful that I was afraid that I would actually lose the plant. The second thing was I didn't want to have 2 pots of the same plant. I wanted to figure out how to combine her. Originally, she was on a moss pole that had a clear backing, and that was the challenge. So what I did was the day that I decided that I was going to propagate her, I made the cut where the moss poles joined. The next day when I came down, I found the plant in distress. So the whole top part of the plant had fallen over due to lack of water, humidity, the whole 9 yards, because it wasn't supported by anything. It was just growing straight up. So as a rescue mission, what I did was I laid her on the floor, and I wet the moss pole and put a towel behind the part that was not supported and added some water to that. I gave her about 30 minutes to recuperate. And after that, that's when I started to disassemble that moss pole. So my idea was, in order to combine the plant, I needed to get rid of the back section, which was the plastic backing, and try to figure out how I was going to get both pieces on the same front panel and combine the back. So I took and I cut her about midways and took off the back panel, combined the 2 front, overlaid them so that they were next to each other. As you can, I don't know if you can actually see here, but if you look, you'll see where the 2 pieces of the chicken wire are combined close together, and it gave me this width of the front. And then as I removed the back panel, I added this piece and then stuffed it with moss. The goal was to get both halves on one pole. Now, is the pole fairly big? Absolutely. I'm going to rotate this a little bit just so that you can see the size of the moss pole from behind. In the process of upgrading her, I actually had to take her out of the original pot that she was in. Obviously, with this size of pole, she was not going to fit there, and it wasn't going to have any stability. And even now, as you can see, I have this right here. So when she goes back to her spot, just as a safety precaution for me, I have her tethered to the wall. I'll show you. So she's got this little picture hanger thing here, and I have her tethered to the wall so that when I do put the bottle to water her, I can feel secure in knowing that she's not going to tip over on me. With all that being said, I knew that she was rooted into the pole. I knew that when I made the cut, I knew that she was rooted into the pole, but my concern was the top portion that was not. And with that being said, when I combined the 2 pieces, the piece that was not attached to the pole, I had to figure out how to get that on here. So if I move this, you'll see this is the top, this part right here is the top cutting. So this was the part that was going above the pole. This is where I made my cut. And I'm going to move these leaves like this so that you can see. So this is where I made my original cut. This whole section from here all the way down to the pot was the part that was over it. So you can just imagine how large she was. And I'm very happy to announce that it seems like the top cut has acclimated to the pot. She put out a new leaf. I couldn't be more ecstatic. The bottom half is also pushing out a new leaf right here. And that's absolutely fantabulous, if there's such a word. So if you don't have a Syngonium chiapense, I really recommend this plant. This plant is hardy. It stands the test of time. She can withstand a little underwatering. If you miss one, she's not going to freak out on you. They start out with the smaller leaves like here, as you could see from the bottom cut. But as she grows, she starts to put out these beautiful leathery big leaves. And there's just nothing like it. She doesn't look like any of the other Syngoniums. This is the Syngonium that I've had in my care for the longest amount of time. Do I recommend her? I think you can tell because I'm gushing over her. But I just wanted to show you that having your plants on a moss pole has its advantages. You are able to propagate them and start a whole new plant, or get creative and figure out how to put them together. Hey guys, I guess you noticed the video kind of ended abruptly. Welcome to my office. Listen, I wanted to share the entire journey with you. Rest assured that this was a labor of love. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, or do a planty chore and follow me through the rest of this journey. I hope you enjoy it. All right, guys, so what you see me doing right here is attempting to divide the pole. I was trying to cut the ties, and they proved to be a little bit more challenging than I originally had anticipated. In order to separate the sections of the plant, I had to get rid of the ties, at least the ones where the cut was. And as you can see, I'm struggling a little bit. During this process, I actually nipped my finger, and you know how finger cuts are. They bleed a lot. But look, finally, seemed to get it separated. So I had to get the bottom from the top, and the roots were entwined within the pole. And even that was a problem, but yay! So now I'm going to attempt to try to get the pot out of the bottom, or get the pole out of the bottom, without disturbing the roots too much. And she had been in there for quite a while, but I really did anticipate a larger root growth. You can see I was a little amazed at the size of the root ball. I was expecting something a little bigger since she had been in this pot for almost a year. The root system in the pot wasn't as big as I had anticipated. You can see me inspecting there for root rot and things of that nature, but the roots were fine. I had to console myself and remind myself that everything had grown within the pole. That's why that root structure looked so small. You know me, I got to save that dirt, especially since that's medium that I actually created. I'm saving it because I'm going to put it at the bottom of the pot that I'm going to transfer her to. Again, I was so uncertain about what I was doing. This was all trial and experiment for me. I was a little worried about the whole process, and I wasn't even sure that it was going to work. But, you know, this hobby is total experimentation. So we're going to push forward here and see where we get. Here I'm contemplating my next step. I wasn't certain, but I did know that I had to get that plastic backing off. So what you see me doing right here is trying to remove the remaining ties. You know, she was attached to the pole, and in order to combine both, I had to get that plastic backing from there. The goal was to leave the moss intact once I pulled them up, but to combine the two mesh screens together. This process would have been a little bit better if I had had some help. Those ties were on there kind of tight, and it was difficult to get them loose. But in the end, I won. She didn't. So in this little section right here, you can see that I've already combined the two front sides of the mesh. And I was counting because I wanted to make sure that I got the soil at the right soil level, or the soil line. So I wanted to pair up the backing that you see me touching there with the front, and make sure that when I put it in the pot, my soil line would be at the level that I wanted. In order to do that, I had measured how far down that pole was going to actually go in the pot. So I had a pretty good idea, hence me counting those spaces out. Y'all, that floor was hard. There was no matter of me trying to get comfortable. And this process actually took longer than I had anticipated. But here we go. Let's start putting that moss in there and get it situated. I didn't want to pack it too tight. Wanted to leave it a little loose so that the water would flow and it wouldn't take so long to absorb, being that the pole was going to be much bigger. Once I got that moss settled in, here comes the challenge of trying to get the moss that was already on the poles to lay in accordance with the moss that I had put in there, and to level them out so that the bottom and the top were even. At this point, I was at my wit's end. If this didn't work, I didn't know what I was going to do. But it was time to try to get this bad boy assembled and get him, ready to go back in that pot. I don't know if you noticed, I had 2 black pots there, and I was undecided based on the size of this pole which pot I was going to use. But considering the size of that root system, I opted for the smaller of the 2 black pots. So right here you see me trying to line it all up. And it was, trial and error. There's nothing wrong with experimenting. But once I had it in a place that I felt comfortable and I thought the plant was going to be okay, I decided to go ahead and start tying it down. And it took several ties to get this to cooperate and to hold it in place. So here you see me adding a little bit of root hormone. And the reason for this is I don't do it all the time, but considering the stress that I had put the plant under, I wanted to give it a leg up. So I sprinkle some of this rooting hormone on it. I understand that this, helps with root shocks, and it helps to grow the roots back. And in the past, when I've used it, I've seen some good results with that. So here we go. The soil mix, so it was my typical soil mix, but I did add a little bit more pumice to this because of the size of the pot and how small that root system was. I wanted to make sure that even though I don't water the medium from the bottom, when I watered from the top, I wanted to make sure that that water was going to flow all the way through, and that soil would have enough time to dry out before the next pole watering. I mixed it up really good because I used a size 3 pumice, which is a little larger. And boy, was it hot. Or maybe I was just tired. But here we go. So, again, I chose the smaller of the 2 pots. But even after putting her in there, I still was a little bit hesitant, uncertain if I was making the right choice. But no guts, no glory. It was time to get this girl back in the pot and backfilled. So we were going to move forward with this. At the end of the day, if I saw any struggling or anything with her, I would have taken her out and started over again. Not necessarily disassembling the pot, but checking the roots just to make sure that I had made a good choice. Look at the size of that pole. Even after I did it, I was amazed at the size, and I wasn't even sure if she was going to be stable. But let's get the back filling. She almost took that whole tub of soil. And in this case, at this time, it would have been great to have another set of hands, because it was a little challenging to try to fill her and hold the pole at the same time. But we got her done. She's starting to look good, starting to look like herself. So now time to add that support on the back. You see me snipping the ties that I used to put the 2 support poles on the back. And in this case, I chose 2 because, again, that moss pole was really big. But she's looking good. Can you see her? I was so proud of myself. I had never attempted something like this, and I wasn't even sure I was going to be able to do it. But, no guts, no glory. You got to try. But now it's time to pick up a little bit, because the plant room always looks like a disaster area after one of these projects. So messy, and I can't stand it. So we're going to clean up a little bit once I'm done admiring my handiwork. I don't know why it is when you work with dirt and you're doing stuff, it just seems to go all over the place, even though you were just in one little section. But I guess in this case, I wasn't. It's only natural for the moss and everything to go all over the place. So we're almost done, or at least I'm almost done. I'm sitting here looking at what I did, and I'm just, I wouldn't say in awe, but it was a challenge, and it took me weeks to decide how I was going to approach this. And I can't say how pleased I am with the end result. At this point, I'm saying to myself, okay, how am I going to move this thing? I needed to get it to the side so I could continue to try to pick up some of my mess. She wasn't exactly heavy. It was just very aki to move and to rotate so that I can continue to pick up before I gave her watering. But here goes. Maybe not from that direction. Let's try that again. Oops. There we go. What a mess. But that's okay. When you guys do your work, is it really messy for you too, or am I the only one that makes a total mess? Because no matter how hard I try, it's always messy. And yes, I'm saving those backs because there's other plants that require an extension, and I can reuse those backs. Finally, time to water her in. This was a labor of love, I've got to tell you. And I have to do it 2 more times, but I'm thinking about it. I hope you enjoyed this. All of this is to say, no guts, no glory. So if you like this type of content, don't forget, like, subscribe, and comment. And guys, thank you so much for being part of the community. Talk to you real soon. Bye.